Oh, good morning. It's Randall with the Philippines Project, and I'm high atop the JM Backpackers complex here in San Miguel, Guimaras, Philippines. Just coming to you this morning. I went to get my standard Nescafe cup of coffee, and the hot water's out. My brain may not work this morning, who knows? But anyway, so the reason I did this video is we had kind of some disturbing news last night. We got a call about 9 o'clock. We were about ready to go to sleep. I was going to try to, and we got a call from my niece. She's over on the property in Guimaras, and there was an accident. And so, of course, something like that happens, it puts you on edge immediately. And of course, as a expat, I'm kind of left in the dark for a little while. That's one thing you may not realize, or you may realize. You may have been through it. If you have, you could go in the comments and kind of tell your side of that story. But, my wife is on the phone. I can tell she's upset. I can tell the person on the other side's upset because most people in the Philippines they talk on the phone on speakerphone. So, I'm sitting there on the bed wondering what's going on, trying to ask questions. She's trying to get information, and not all the information is available. All we know is that her younger brother and his two boys were with him on the tricycle that we purchased last year, and they were going to go down and pick up their mother, at the Parola, at the ferry. So that's what we knew, and then that they had an accident of some sort. What we could find out at that point was that there was a blown out front tire. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with tricycles in the Philippines, but they have very beefed up tires on the motorcycle part. And the sidecar kind of has some beef up tire on it too, but they're not a regular motorcycle tire. So I look at those tires, I think, how could you ever damage one? But so we're trying to get as much information as we can, and also we know that the younger son had a head injury. I didn't know whether he's conscious. I didn't know whether he, what the situation was. All kind of scenarios run through your mind. I'm thinking, is he, did they hit something else? Did they, what happened? And the information is just dribbling out extremely slow. And because, they have to get off the phone, they don't know the whole situation. So here we are at the hotel, and just wondering what's going to happen, what went on. And the first thing I thought about was my niece last year. She passed away. Tragic situation. I've got a video on it. I don't want to talk about it, but these kind of fears come up in your mind whenever, somebody in the family gets hurt. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to take this, what is going on? I needed more information. So, I could have got a tricycle and run over there, I guess, hired one, who knows? But until you really know what's going on, you're not helping anybody, and you're just taking yourself out of the communication loop. So I know that he's 9 years old, and I know that he had a head injury. I didn't know, again, whether he's conscious or whether he's passed out. If he's conscious, it's a lot more hopeful, in my opinion. Not that I have any kind of medical experience, but if you're unconscious, we don't know. You may never wake up again. I don't know how severe the head injury was. So I do know that the front tire had blown out. That's the information we got up to that point. So the boy's mother was on the way over to Guimaras on the ferry, so my wife called her. Of course, she didn't know anything about it. And of course, her hearing the news is a shocking situation for her. And she tends to get a little excited, which under this circumstance I understand. I definitely understand that. I'm not downgrading her in any way, but I know this kind of news. People receive news. People react. Sorry, there's a mosquito on my leg. People react differently, and his mother, let's just say she takes news hard sometimes. So I was kind of concerned about her. What's she going to do? I've seen her at a funeral. I've seen her pass out. I've seen her pass out on 2 or 3 different occasions. So that's in my mind, thinking what happens if she passed out on the ferry boat and there's nobody else but her. They don't know who she is. So here she is coming over here and she don't know about her son. So they got off the phone. So up to that point, you know as much as I do, and that's where I was in my head. That's how I'm trying to illustrate the story or present the story, because it's like, what's going to happen next? I can tell you the end, but this is how the information was relayed to me. So my niece was involved as far as the information gathering, and she's a college graduate, and she speaks Tagalog, she speaks English, and so that helped my wife. She doesn't speak a lot of Ilongo, and my brother-in-laws weren't really available for comment or questioning at that point, because the older brother jumped on my motorcycle there at the property and went down to the Parola to get the sister-in-law and my niece, Irish. So because somebody had to pick him up, and so he went down there. So he's on the bike. I can't get any information out of him, and at least until he gets down to the Parola. So they're on the way down there. I don't know where the accident occurred. So it sounds like, well, don't tease us along, but that's exactly when something happens like this and you got limited information, you get teased along as a person involved in this story, and I'm thinking about everything, all the possibilities. They don't know where the hospital is. I'm like, come on, guys, get out and drive around a little bit. I know where the hospital is. I didn't grow up here, and they don't know where that's at, and just all these things are coming up. And what about this? What about that? And I'd ask my wife questions. She'd get aggravated because she don't know, and it's just one of those high pressure situations that you find yourself in sometimes. So anyway, the information started to come in. Finally, we got my wife said, we'll go across the road, and there's a lady across the road from our property. She knows everybody. She's been there forever. And long story short on that section of it, they got involved. They got a hold of the barangay captain and I guess they call him a counselor, a tanod, and which we know them pretty well. I sat down with the barangay captain this week, and we had about an hour discussion over some other situations. So I knew who was involved, and I knew he was a competent guy. They have a vehicle at the barangay, and they were going to pick up Marvin and his dad and take him to the local hospital. So that's done. That's off my mind. I said, is he awake? And they said, yeah, he's awake. So that was a worry off my mind. I can't stomach another tragedy of that magnitude here in the Philippines. I just can't. I'm gonna either have to, it's just too much. My dad passed away last year. I never did say anything about this. I had a nephew that passed away last year through very difficult circumstances. And my niece passed away last year. And now this nephew of mine is in a motorcycle accident, tricycle accident, and I don't have all the information. So I'm pretty stressed last night, about 11 o'clock. This was by this time, it was about 11 o'clock last night. And my wife's going back and forth finally with her brothers, and it's like, what's happening? And I don't really know. But they got him to the hospital, and it was probably 11:30 at night before we got really any information. They'd given some x-rays. He got 2 stitches. He was awake the whole time, so glad about that. They gave him some lidocaine, which I guess is a pain reliever. And it's silly, but they gave us a list. We didn't go to the hospital. Me and Flora didn't go to the hospital because you go to the hospital and you got white skin, and she's obviously from abroad. She speaks Tagalog. They're going to know right away that, and not that it matters that much, but it does matter. If you're here, you'll see why. But the price tag's going to probably triple, right away. So anyway, they got him patched up. My youngest brother-in-law, they said he was kind of walking with a limp. We don't know what the extent of his injuries are. So they did some x-rays, I think, on both of them. And I guess they went home last night. I don't really know. I'm sure they did, because I think I would have heard different. But I think everything is okay. But I haven't seen him myself. I haven't seen the way he interacts. I don't think they would have released him from the hospital if he was in kind of really bad shape. And they did keep him there for observation for a few hours. So that was good on them. I've never been inside the Guimaras Island Hospital. It's basically a brand new building, but I don't know what kind of health care they provide. So anyway, yeah, he's back home. It really wasn't all that expensive. I think it would have been more expensive if we were there. And the end of the story, I don't really know. But I know we've got a tore up tricycle as far as, the big thick tires that go on them things. We're going to have to replace that. I don't know if the wheel is bent. I just don't know. So these are the things we're going to face today. I've got to get back home to Pavia. And then I've got to get back here on Monday to a barangay meeting about the property. So a lot of things going on. So yeah, didn't sleep a lot last night. Of course, you have dreams and all these things, and I'm not trying to tell you a sob story, but what I try to do here on this channel is tell you about my life here. And I'm the last person in the world that wants drama. You'll know I have very few videos on this channel about any kind of drama. I believe if you invite drama into your life, and I mean, you're a person who flies off the handle all the time, or is jealous, or just has a hard time interacting with other people, you're going to attract those kind of people and those kind of events into your life. So Flora and I, we really try as much as possible to lead a very peaceful, quiet, boring life, a positive life with a positive attitude, and accomplish our goals one by one, having faith in God and faith in our fellow humanity, and faith in our own good principles to be honest and upright. And I don't like drama. I don't like, that's the opposite of Randall, that's for sure, of the Philippines Project. I don't like drama at all. And there's channels out there with drama. If you want to watch that, go watch them. And hey, to each his own, that's just not me. I don't like to bring this kind of news. I don't like to really talk about this kind of stuff, but it is something that you'll face. Of course you're concerned about the person, or maybe if you're involved in that accident, you're concerned about that, and there's that time between when and when you hear about it, that's an anxious time. And then limited communication ability. Sometimes, maybe a brother-in-law doesn't have a load. He can't talk to you. These are little things that, they just, in the Philippines, they talk about a death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's like, if it was in America, if a person is half dead, they can answer their phone. But if you don't have a load on your phone and your phone don't even work, that's a complication the Philippines has that really just isn't really there in America for most people. So all these little things stacked up sometimes just get to you. And yeah, it's you really have to have, or need to have, or should have a calm head when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I have every confidence that everything's going to turn out all right. And I'm like, well, did they check? When's the last time they checked the tire pressure? When's the last time they did maintenance on the vehicle? All these kind of things. How were they driving? If you've ever been in the Philippines, the driving here is not the greatest. They don't teach safety. As long as you get by legally, a cop won't stop you because whatever, your license, they're going to let you go. There's no vehicle inspections. Well, there's a smog test, which basically is a money grab. You go to get your motorcycle license once a year, and they charge you 400 pesos, which is not horrible, but that's the extent of the inspection here. They never check your brakes. They check your exhaust. They don't check your lights. They don't do any of these kind of checks. You don't have to turn in an inspections, And we all hate those in America, in the West, because, oh, you got to go get your windshield wipers replaced and get a receipt, take it back, but they don't have any of that here. The only thing they have is a smog test, I call it, emissions test. And to me, it's just a money grab, but whatever. It is what it is. It's just the way it is here. You can fight the Philippines you want to, but it's going to be the same way when you get done with the fight. But, so my question is, how safe was it? How safe was the driving? And these issues will all be addressed. One thing that I have, and it's Filipino culture. It's not my family. I'm not complaining about my family. They're Filipino family through and through. And there's a lot that comes with that. But like the other day, and this is common. This is not just the other day, not one instance, but Michael was going to take me. I wanted to get some meat, go to the market, get some prepared chicken, and I was look around, see what we had, because we didn't have much to eat, and the whole crew was there, and there's kids there, and I said, I'm going to buy a couple chickens. We'll buy some liempo. Mike, let's go, and let's go get it. Well, we get in the tricycle. We didn't announce it to anybody else, but before we got out the gate, there's 3 or 4 kids all piled on the tricycle. And yeah, that's the way the Philippines is. And you see that, you'll see people crammed into a tricycle. You watch on a school morning, there'll be 15 kids. I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but not much. But you know how they pile on. If you've ever been here, if you haven't, look at some videos. But they all pile on, the tricycle, and I don't mind. I love the family. I love the kids. It's a thrill for them to get out of the property and go to town. But really, if you think mainly about safety, how safe is that? Now, they're all sitting on an approved, there's 1 or 2 behind the driver, which is not really anything approved. There's no approval process. There's 3 people on a motorcycle seat, which is common. It's a tricycle, so nobody's required to wear helmets. And then there's, 2 in the back or 3 in the back, and I'm in the front, and then the motorcycle driver. So we've got, I'd say 2 in the back. So we're pretty well. There's no seat belts on the thing. It's just not a thing here. And 2 young girls, maybe 13 to 15, 16, sitting on the back of the motorcycle. 2 kids on the inside, and they're having fun like kids will do. But we're going down the road probably 35, 40 miles an hour, and I had to quiet some kids down the other day. We're going up a hill, and they're reaching in to the kid that's on the back of the motorcycle, and they're teasing each other, and it's like, it's all a big game. Well, it is all a big game until somebody falls out of the tricycle. So hopefully this is a minor incident, but I will tell you this for sure. Going forward, that tricycle is going to be used, how do I say it, with care, great care and safety. And if somebody doesn't have any business going to town, they're not going to go to town. We're going to go to town as safely as possible. And if I have to get on a tricycle and teach them how to drive it in this sense, because they're a better tricycle driver than I am, obviously. I've only driven one less than a mile. I don't really like them, but because they're just different from a motorcycle. But I'm going to insist on certain things. And one thing that got me, and I'm running a little bit late here, but I'm going down the road yesterday, and there's a little compartment in the front of the tricycle. I had bought oil for that tricycle for them to get to change the oil about 4 weeks ago, and here we are. That oil hadn't been changed since August of last year. And my oldest brother, he likes to say, he has a saying, if it is to be, it's up to me, but I can't cover everything. I mean, people have responsibilities. These grown men are not my kids. I don't feel like I have to get after them all the time. You know, I bought the oil, for God's sakes. Let's get the oil changed. It takes what, 30 minutes? So I was going out the gate the other day, riding in the sidecar, and a big screech on the front. Now I know physically the back brakes have been changed, and I know a lot of things have been done to it. I paid for it. A lot of things have been done to it. But I heard screeching brakes in the front, and I'm like, why are we hearing screeching brakes? I want the damn thing fixed nice, so it's comfortable, it's reliable, and above all, it's safe to ride on. Because I mean, this is my family over here. I've got family back in the United States too, and I don't care any less about these people than I do about my daughters and brothers in the U.S. But I'm sure you probably sense a sense of frustration in me, and I am, because riding that tricycle, calm, easy, going through the gears slowly, and leaving a following distance in front of yourself, and not darting in and out of traffic. That's not the way people operate here, not any of them. I'm not blaming my brothers-in-law, but they just don't operate that way. But that leaves a lot of risk open, and everything's fun and games until somebody's laying on the pavement. I've had 2 motorcycle accidents here, I can tell you. My motorcycle riding is severely diminished here. So Guimaras is pretty good, but Iloilo City, I just do local stuff if I'm on my bike. But anyway, I'm gonna put a smile on my face today. We got to go back to the family over there in Guimaras this morning, on the property. We're already in Guimaras. So, as the Filipinos say, Guimaras. I say it that way. But anyway, I'm going to keep a positive attitude. We're going to get some safety things done. I'm going to require that they keep a log on it's another thing, the speedometer doesn't work. So therefore what am I trying to say? The mileage doesn't rotate, but we're going to have to put it at least on a time schedule, get a new little dashboard set up so they can get on a schedule with this thing. And so we're going to put in some maintenance controls, and I'm going to see that gets done. But anyway, I usually say I hope you enjoyed this, but it's kind of a stressful deal. But anyway, that's what happens in the Philippines sometimes. So it's all going to be good. None of us is going to get out of this life alive. I had stitches in my head when I was a little bit older than this guy, and so things happen. I also realize that. But anyway, this is Randall with the Philippines Project. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.